Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, Andrew said my name is Martin Lote, and I'm the founder of CheckoutScout.com. And one of the themes of eCommerce Expo this time around is CX, customer experience, which we normally think of at the B2C level. But as this session is brought to you by CheckoutScout, which is a new website that aims to help e-commerce retailers and D2Cs find the best tech providers and vendors to help them grow their business, we're going to flip things around a little bit. And the next half hour is going to be a reality check to find out what e-commerce users, like our panel, really want to hear from tech vendors trying to reach them. What are the do's and don'ts if you're selling technology? How do you get a foot in the door in the first place? And when you've done that, how do you avoid shooting yourself in the very same foot? I think we might find that for some tech solution providers and vendors, CX really should mean client experience. So to put this to the test, we've assembled a stellar lineup of impartial experts to answer a few questions this afternoon, and I will introduce everybody, starting at the far side there. Rhya Johnston-Wallace is the Digital Commerce Manager at FRAMA, which, in case you don't know, is a Danish-based provider of lifestyle homewares and apothecary items. She's currently overhauling the whole e-commerce operation, so I'm glad to say she's taken a very short break to fly in to London today to be on our panel. Louisa Nicholls, next along, recently left John Lewis after a 20-year career where she did almost everything there, including brand marketing, e-commerce and digital transformation. And I'm told that during the height of the pandemic, she was responsible for driving £2.4 billion of online sales. She's actually just told me over lunch that in November she's starting a very interesting new job. She's going to become the Chief Customer Officer of the British retailer M&Co. Next along we have David Williams, who recently became Digital Director of DCC Vital, an online supplier of vital things like pharmaceuticals and medical devices. He's an established e-commerce leader and advisor, as I can attest myself, as experience includes Charles Turrett and Deckers, the owner of UGG Footwear. And then last but of course not by no means least, we have Aron Cody-Boutcher, CMO of the fast-rising British marketplace OnBuy, where he's been for 5 months. Aron, as some may know, is very visible on LinkedIn, has strong views about how vendors should present themselves. He's also held senior roles at a clothing brand Sea Salt, Nisbet's Catering and Clark's Shoes. So let's kick off. Can I start with you, please, Rhya? You, as I said in my remarks, you've undergoing a huge overhaul of the e-commerce operation for FRAMA. What are you seeing in the marketplace in terms of tech providers and vendors, and what's standing out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tech buying has been sort of my live and breathe job for the past 6 months as we've been undergoing this process, and our discovery phase for that will have been, probably just as long as the development phase when all is said and done. So it's been really interesting to get the different techniques and pitches of all these different providers, and one thing I've really just always leaned on is the advice and the testimonials of people in the industry. I really think that creating good customer relationships is your best reference as a tech provider, and really leaning on developers too and trusting the tech that they're implementing day in and day out. It's really the discovery phase that launches that interest in a tech provider, and it's really important to be where people like myself are looking. I think some really great examples are a company called Heap, who does a lot of data visualization and data engineering, and I've been completely taken with their ads on LinkedIn and the scale and just quality of that, and it's something that's really resonated with me. And I feel like it's a lot more credible than when you get the cold sales pitch. So kind of a combination of that personal discovery, but also a lot of references and trusting your peers. So testimonials are hugely important.
Yeah, thanks for that info and mentioning a company, Heap, that you're impressed with. That's good to know. Louisa, can I turn to you? You're obviously starting a new job, so we can't really talk too much about that, but you've 20 years experience at John Lewis. You must have had a whole host of interactions with tech providers and potential partners. What sort of techniques stand out for you, and what specific companies as well?
You make me sound very old saying 20 years. I did join when I was 5. Yeah, no, it's I mean, it really resonates with me what you were saying there around, they need to find their own voice, they need to find their own brand, and they need to, it's so important, that internal and external branding for a tech provider, essentially, because once you're known in the industry of doing something well and you're renowned for it, you start to flip the reverse, and you've got retailers going out to you and asking you for advice and services rather than you doing the cold calling and chasing. One in particular that really stands out for me, and I've worked alongside them for a number of years, and I think they're really great, is Wonderkin, so formerly BounceX. And they approach the way they deal with clients, and they approach the way they approach prospective clients quite differently to a lot of vendors. So you won't find them in the big conferences with the stands giving out free mints and pens, etc. They'll think very differently around how they build relationships and become memorable with their prospective clients, and they put a lot of effort in that. So it's not the usual car salesman type approach. They won't continue to hound you, and it just makes you rethink and reassess. Actually, that is someone that I would want to work with, and they do it very, very well.
David, can I turn to you? You've great experience in this area and worked for several key players. What stands out for you as a method of being approached by a tech vendor? What are you looking to see?
Well, I really relate, being approached by a tech vendor. It's very similar at the moment. You say client experience. It's customer experience. We're still customers at the end of the day, and we're doing exactly the same things that a customer does in this new digital world. So cold calling doesn't work. LinkedIn invites saying, hi there, we're in the same world and we need to connect because we've got some similar interests, isn't going to work. When we need the technology, we're investigating it. We're talking to our peers. We're investigating it, and we're finding as much information that we can find out before we probably approach the vendors ourselves or show interest at some point to an approach. And I think that's really important. So for vendors, it's cold calling, LinkedIn isn't the way forward. It really isn't. I can't see that working because it doesn't stink of partnership. It doesn't suggest the partnership that you need. I mean, I think from my perspective is the vendors, is to know your audience. So if you do have a discussion with a vendor, I expect them to know their audience. I expect them to have done their investigation on my website, understand the brands that I'm working for. Pretty straightforward these days to Wapalizer and these various technologies to find out what platforms you're on. So you could do your due diligence and look at that and understand what platforms I might be working with, that sort of thing. And as Louisa said, the relationship building going beyond that is really important as well. So you need to know what their point of differentiation is. Are they going to be a partner versus just the technology that you use? Because I think we're in this world now where it's so complicated. We need partners of our vendors as well. We need to know when they sell it to us that they're going to be a partner with us. Goes back to the point again of differentiation. I mean, at the moment, having looked at customer experience platforms, customer data platforms, there are so many of them. There are so many of them out there at the moment. So that point of differentiation to me is really important. You've got to know your difference, know your competitor set, and be able to differentiate yourself. So I think it is very much around relationship building. It's very much thinking and trying to get into the mind of how a client or a customer is going to research the technologies that they need. There's more information out there, there's more reliance on peers, and there's more reliance on case studies and those sorts of things. So it's not the old way of doing it, of doing cold calling. It's not going to work anymore.
Aaron, I know you were bombarded by approaches after you joined OnBuy, particularly when a round of funding had been announced. In fact, you did a famous LinkedIn post which said you've been up to 3:30 a.m. Deleting your emails. So what does stand out for you when a tech provider is trying to get in touch?
I think for me it's like any client kind of supplier relationship. It's fundamentally built on trust. And trust isn't something that's built with one LinkedIn post or just one email dropped into your inbox unsolicited. It's something that's built up with time. It's something that is earned. It's something that you need to go through and have those proof points and those reasons to believe in this technology will solve your challenge or add value to the business in the way they describe. And I've got a great couple of examples of this. I mean, we recently placed a contract with a CDP called Epson, and they spoke to us for 3 years. And when I joined OnBuy, I remember the CEO, Kaz, he said to me, so Dave Epstein, you have to talk to him. Everybody needs a Dave in their life. And for me, I mean, at that point where you've got that strong relationship, then there is I guess the question is about the capability of the system, etc., and making sure it kind of ticks all the boxes of what you're trying to achieve with it. But at the end of the day, any technology platform is about the relationship at the end of the day. And that's where, these hordes of emails and these hordes of links, I've got probably 300 unanswered kind of LinkedIn requests, I think, at this point in time. And so for me, how do you build that trust? It's something you can do events like this. You can do it through, I guess, those case studies you can do, like with CheckoutScout, which I really like. And I think other ways you can do it is exactly as Rhya said. It's like with Orabi, they did exactly the same as Heap, where they were going through and using Facebook and targeted advertisements to me. They knew who I was, but they didn't actually pick up the phone and talk to me. They just got the brand in front of me, in front of me, in front of me, in front of me, and I know what they do. I like them. I like the way they operate. And now I have that problem, I can go through and get a solution to it. So for me, it's not about necessarily solutions finding problems, but it's making sure the problems then go out and find the solution, which is just shifting on its head a little bit. So.
Is there an element when, in your experience, when people are trying to attract your attention and sell technology, that there's a bit of a spray and pray element, that they'll get thousands of hits out there and hope a couple of land, whereas if they really concentrated on 5 or 10 and got to know them, it might be more effective in the midterm?
Yeah, 100%. And I think for me, so 5 months at OnBuy, I've received one piece of DM.
Physical DM.
Physical DM, and we placed one contract off the back of that. And that piece of DM that came through was brilliant. It was like a pair of glasses with those red lenses. And then there was a code on there, didn't even have the brand on it. So you had to pick up the glasses and say, who sent me this? And at that point, it's going, okay, that is quite interesting. It's innovative. Okay, let's pick up the phone and see what they do. And so for it's cutting through in new and exciting ways to say, oh, actually, these people are, and we didn't fully know what they do, but they thought there's something exciting about this business, to do something slightly out there. And they've blown us away in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, it's cutting through.
What's the service that they provide?
Still under contract negotiations,
right.
So I can't...
Okay, fair enough. Worth a try.
Dry,
Now, just turning to a few key subject areas within the field of e-commerce, we looked at some of the feedback we'd had on CheckoutScout.com recently, and we've got three subjects that came up quite a little bit, and I'd like to just touch on them. Data integration, post-purchase communication, and building up subscriptions. Maybe starting over again with you, please, Rhya. Data integration, obviously a big piece. What are you seeing at FRAMA in terms of who can help you with that, and what messages resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had some really amazing discussions today around data, and coming from FRAMA, which is an SME, and we're very design focused, the way that data plays a role for us might be very different than a big data company who has, teams of analysts sitting in a room, and a lot of SMEs don't have access to that physical person there responsible for analyzing the data. So a huge part of our replatforming project was really to take back control of our data and define an ecosystem that our team can manage, and our team can be empowered to use data to their advantage, which is really why we went with a tried and true ecosystem of Bright Pearl, Shopify, Klaviyo, because the data talks very nicely with one another. And I think that visualization is becoming almost as important as the data itself too, especially when you're taking data to key stakeholders and you need a backup for why you get the green light on projects, and having the tools to really visualize your data and bring them into context is just as important as having that huge database of knowledge, because most companies in our size can't handle that amount of data, unfortunately. It would be lovely if we could, but so it's really been about fine-tuning that ecosystem where we're at a point that people can make decisions with the data that we have.
Right, thank you, yeah. Louisa, you might have something to add on that topic, but also specifically wanted to ask you about post-purchase communication with customers and keeping in touch, which is something which at John Lewis you must have experimented with in all kinds of ways. Yeah. What can you say about the importance of that, and who can help you with it?
It's an interesting topic, because it's the debate around what does post-purchase communication, what is it? So you can, anyone that's running retention strategies, for example, you've got your emails, you've got your, you bought a mattress. have you thought about buying a headboard, sheeting, or whatever it might be, those obvious things that if you haven't got them at checkout, you then kind of retarget and that approach. But it's also much broader than that. Post-purchase communication, there's data to show that the younger generations in particular, they like to problem solve. They're not ones to pick up the phone to customer services straight away. They'll go and try and solve the problem. So thinking around how you use chatbots, how you use social in that space, how you even simply upload videos and how-to around this area, really helps with that post-purchase communications. And then how you dial up social, how you link in with the customers. So if you've gone from a personal styling appointment, for example, how does that personal stylist continue that narrative and that conversation with the customer? You've seen it with Thread and things like that, where you sign up and then you just stitch fitch, where you get your products, and then you've also almost got someone personalizing the experience for you. How do you do that as a brand and continue to talk to the customer? And then you weave in the customer lifetime value, and you start to understand how important post-purchase is. So it's not just about the bounce backs and the discounts if you come back and shop within a certain period of time. It's that whole ecosystem that you need to try and create. Because a lot of retailers, especially around Black Friday, and the reason I mention it is because it's on everyone's minds at the moment, you get a lot of one purchasers. So if you look at someone like John Lewis, you've got, I don't know, whatever it might be, the latest tech, and that's gonna sell out quite quickly. You've got people that are not usually a John Lewis customer coming in to buy that. The Apple launches are the other things. When the new iPhone launches, John Lewis will have the stock, so you will go where the stock is. But how do you then communicate and retain those customers when they're not potentially? They could be a 19-year-old guy, for example, which is not classically a John Lewis customer. But how do you think about how you do try and retain them and bring them into the fold? Because the earlier you can get them, the more you'll see that customer lifetime value.
Just picking up one point you mentioned there about the different shopping habits and engagement customers of younger people, Generation Z particularly, and I think it was touched on by a talk earlier on. I think it was Debbie Ellison from VMLY and our Commerce, and our chairman Andrew asked a question about it. Given those are changing habits, do you think that generation will keep those habits and customs as they mature, and it's a sort of structural shift, or is it just a phase and they'll come to a more
I think
different
it is.
cohort?
Yeah,
habit
I think
later?
they're forcing the older generations, to be perfectly honest. We had a conversation, didn't we, just before we came on around what does service mean to generations. So if you're, 50 plus, service to you might be going into a shop and sitting down with a shop assistant and being talked through your made-to-measure blinds, and your services to a 20-year-old is, can they get that item by the end of today? So it's very, very different, and so they're pushing at that. And I think where we've seen COVID accelerate the adoption of social media, purely because there was a need and a want. So, grandparents suddenly wanted to go onto Facebook to see what their grandkids were doing. Not the grandkids are actually on Facebook now that the grandparents are, but to share photos, etc. There's that. You have to have that value exchange. You have to have a reason to be doing something, and I think that is key to any type of marcoms going forward, or any type of thinking around customer experience.
Thank you. Yeah, a third topic that came up as something which people were interested in finding out a bit more about was subscriptions and subscriptions building tools. Aron, maybe you could take this one on with your experience. What are you seeing out there as possibilities for growing subscriptions?
I think subscriptions is a really interesting one, because it's about the balance of having a generalist system like Odoo that's got a lot of capabilities in it, versus plugging in the 7 or 8 different capabilities a business needs to go through and really make subscriptions scale. I mean, for us, that whole scale challenge is what enables you to grow, 37 million products, etc., and 3 million orders. When you're in subscriptions, it's the same challenge. How do you go through and start off with this tool, again, Odoo is a good one of those, and go with that route, or do you actually put in kind of the big enterprise level stuff if you've got a true belief in that subscription is going to really go through and scale? So then you're looking at specialist analytics systems, specialist CDP, specialist ERP that can deal with recurring payments and so on. And at that point, there's a whole architecture to build, is the reality. So I think it's quite easy to set off in subscriptions, but then it's the playing that then off against putting in all the other capabilities the business needs for the future. So.
In a minute, I might just get some of your views on a point that Rhya made, which was about helping to sell internally to stakeholders, because I'm sure that the tech providers can help not just convince you, but the people that you work with. But David, I don't know if you've got anything to add to any of those specific topics that we just discussed then.
No, not on that right now, no. That's fine. I mean, the thing I would probably say is, again, selling to internal stakeholders.
Yeah, deal with that one then.
Probably, that's
specifically, how can your vendor friends give
I
you some ammo?
I think cause it goes back to the point about integrations and trying to sell it in, because you'll often get pushback that that's hard to integrate, etc. So I think you need your vendor to help build your business case with you, because they've got that experience. And everyone else has used one, and not one that people don't know, because I think most people in the last 2 years have had relationships with Klarna, so might recognise this. But building business cases with you to show you where the uplift might be, understand your integrations, the needs that need to be done there, and simplify that process. Because at the end of the day, a vendor's done it 1,000 times before with virtually every shopping platform that you want to go on, whether it's Shopify, Magento, Hybris, Salesforce. So I expect them to help. I expect them to help the business case, and also I expect them to be accountable for helping deliver that when a years later, when it's implemented, to see whether it's actually deliver what you expect it to be. And I think that's one thing you really need to get of good vendors, where you're going for the bigger proof of concept, is where you need their support and help. But also you take ownership of the actual presentation of it, because you'll adapt it, because you'll know your business better. So I think that's one of the things that just comes out to me, is that when you have that vendor relationship and selling it in, I think that's super important.
You need to think of the vendors as an extension of your team. So, you've got often you've got the sellers out there, on these sort of events that are trying to sell the product in, but very quickly you build up that rapport, and then they step away, and then the implementation team comes in. And so it's thinking about how you've got that seamless step between the two, because often the seller is they're a seller because they're good at selling, and they build rapport very quickly. If that reputation that they built up as a seller and a sales team doesn't translate to the implementation side, that's a challenge. And if the implementation side hasn't spoken to the seller and to really understand around, what are the problems that are trying to solve, and don't try and sell them in a year's time. It's building up that, so integrating them into the team, but it's also not overselling something, because it's very easy to do, and it's highly frustrating if you bring in a solution and then in a year's time they sort of say, oh, by the way, there needs to be an upgrade that really, if you don't take it, it's not going to be quite as good, and by the way, it's £1 million. That's really frustrating, and it's remarkable how many people are still like that. And you kind of think to yourself, do you not realise that we all talk? When you keep doing that, you're going to start building that reputation. And some of the big players are like that. But the final thing that I really like is, and back to your point a little bit, David, is around how you build that business case. But not just that, a lot of them now will take some of your data and run, not trials, but they'll be able to understand where the issues are before you even sign the contract. And indeed, sometimes they may say, actually, we're not the right solution for you, or you're too big for us, or your data is so awful, we're not going to come anywhere near you. And that, again, is hugely compelling, and that that really builds the trust element that you were talking about as well.
It's a very good salesman or woman who turns away your business because you're too big for them. But yes, it does build up credibility.
It does, because you don't want that reputation of failure.
No. Aron, were you going to make a point on that?
Yeah, it's a very simple one. I think for me, one of my favourite questions to a technology supplier is, how much does a free trial cost? They love that one.
I think it goes to the point of, I wrote down some thoughts around hearing everybody, is that element of, you need them to understand their audience, don't they, really? They need to understand their audience they're talking to, which I related to back at the beginning, but horses for courses is always what I've always used as a bit of a mantra. You don't get a Grand National winner to run a flat race. Not that I'm a horse person, but it's knowing who you're dealing with and getting the right vendor for you, which is either through peers or just having resources to find that out. So, for example, your example of the Shopify world, it is, we said before lunch, it's like, you'll be using Klaviyo and you'll be using, the same Shopify universe that's there. But then, obviously, when you're going to the world of post-purchase communication, there's a huge amount of data there when you're at John Lewis, etc. It's very different about what you need and the complications there. are really important. Again, it goes back to your point as well about integrations as well. You know what you're getting with Shopify, Klaviyo world, because it's integrated. They know what they're doing, and I think that's a really important point that I can't stress alone. That's the integrations piece is really important.
Right, yeah. In a minute, we might see if there's any questions from the floor. So if you've got any questions, please get ready to put your hand up, and we'll see if we can get a microphone to you. Just while you're pondering that, just like to go around the panel one more time, and just a specific point about, say you're in the market for a piece of technology or a solution. What is the first thing you do? Do you do a search? Do you talk to some friends? Do you look at your competitors and try and work out what they're doing? What's the entry point for you when you are in the market for something? Starting with yourself, please,
Yeah, I
Rhya.
think there's kind of, a few steps to the process. The first is there anybody that's already top of mind for this problem? If not, search. And then third, references. And I think just touching back on everything we just talked about, the most important piece of that point of discovery where I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to contact somebody is brand references. Do they handle anybody that's like my brand? Can they show me that they know how to handle a brand with my business model or in a similar space as me? And that's really that final step before I've made the decision to contact somebody. Or if somebody's contacting me outright, it better be alongside case studies or examples of other brands they're dealing with that are comparable to my own. And that's really as well as stakeholders too. I mean, that's a huge tool when presenting to stakeholders to say, this brand and this brand and this brand that we consider ourselves very much in the same arena are all using this piece of tech fantastically. So that's a really key point of decision making for me, at least.
That's a good set of points. Louisa, would you build on
I
that?
agree with all that. That's an easy answer, isn't it? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the peer-to-peer piece is crucial. And back to your point, it's a really good one around actually the case studies need to be relevant, not just to the market. So don't bring me American case studies. Don't bring me case studies in pharmaceuticals when I'm in retail. They need to be incredibly relevant to that market. But also use your team. I think a lot of leaders don't use their teams enough. These are the people that will have worked on the ground with these vendors in previous roles.
Previous jobs and roles.
They will have colleagues. They will know. They will be more connected than you will ever be, but I promise you, because they're actually doing it. So use them, get their experience. And experience is so important to understand. Anyone can sell you a dream. Anyone can have a flashy website and sell you the dream, but it's that peer-to-peer. But it's also the way that they sell. So I see a lot of the way you sell to a British market is completely different to the way you sell to an American market. And you often see the American companies coming in and trying to sell like they would to a New Yorker. Americans love to be, sorry if there's any Americans there, they love to be sold to. They love the sales pitch, whereas us Brits, we don't like that. We think that it's disingenuous. We like to be schmoozed a little bit more and it's a little bit more gentle. So you can see if they can adapt themselves to the markets, that's hugely compelling. And then the Scandinavian market's even more different. But it goes back to your point as well around, if they've done their homework and their research, that goes a long way.
David, do you like to be treated gently?
Well, it depends, isn't it? Yeah. But I really agree with what everything said here. I think the initial research is important. If you're a leader, it's important to do your initial research. Going back to that, I do rely on peer-to-peer content probably second, but same thing as cold calling. If I went to the peers and said, tell me all the vendors you've spoken to, they'd probably get pretty pissed off pretty quick. Because you'd be going, look, I'm not doing your job for you. So there's the element there that, you need to know who's out there in that market and narrow those vendors down anyway before you even reach out to them. But the peer-to-peer thing is important as well. And I actually very much agree with you, is let your teams go off and come to you. Say we want to look at a CDP or we want to look at a chat platform. They're the ones who are in the day-to-day and a lot of these things who are going to be doing the work. So they'll know better than you as a leader how the tools work, and they'll be able to work their networks as well. I think it's really important. Yeah. And that's often been a mantra I've done before, certainly at Deckers.
So before CheckoutScout came along, where did you get your peer-to-peer reviews?
We all chat.
You chat.
All our those of us who've been
Get on
around,
panels.
I've been around longer than you have, you see. So we know a lot of there's a lot of peer-to-peer discussion.
Right.
If you need a little bit of advice, and it's and I think the other thing is with technology for e-commerce, etc. We use resources everywhere. You use case studies online and other things, but you're generally at the vanguard in the e-commerce or retail world of technology. So you kind of need that peer-to-peer network and advice and case studies there, because there's no proven way of doing it. You're not going in there with a retail point of sale system, which someone has been there for years. It's kind of at the vanguard, and if you want to try and innovate and find new technologies like subscription services, you kind of need that peer-to-peer network and content there to help you make the decisions.
That's why it's so important to build your network. It absolutely is, because especially in e-com, because things move so quickly.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many events in that space, because it is so important to build it.
Aaron, would you add to that?
Yeah, I think that's the point where the sales teams and the outreach teams need to then really truly understand their audience. So it always makes me sure, I don't know about John Lewis, but Monday is the trade day. You're doing all the counting for the previous week. It's the most exciting day of the week. It's the best day of the week, and you're all excited. What happened? What can we do to push it this week? And then you get the phone call from the sales guy on the Monday going, hey, do you want to? No, not on Monday. No, you just don't understand your audience.
Right.
Trying to talk to a retailer on a Monday? Big no-no.
Right.
So if you're demonstrating that understanding and helping to solve the problems in the right way, Friday, totally happy. That's the day to hit me with the sales.
Good point.
Not this week.
On that note, it's not a Monday or a Friday, so we can take some questions. Any questions from the audience, please? Not being inundated at the moment. Maybe it's being phoned in.
Yeah, she's got a hand up.
Oh, sorry, maybe I just couldn't see the hand up. Thank you, please do, yeah. Could you say who you are?
Yes, I'm Camilla Tress, I'm from Oliver Bonus, and I'm just going to contribute in that I receive a lot of vendor emails too, and if there are any vendors here, one of my top tips is actually explain what you do. I get so many vendor emails who just go, oh, we love your business and we can really help you and we've helped X, Y, and Z. Please contact me, and you don't know what they do, and it's such a simple schoolboy error. So yeah, that's.
Do you think that's because they think that you already know, or they just haven't got around to putting it in their communication?
I don't think it occurs to them. I don't know.
I think you've got an element here that you've still got some old school sales techniques, which are the old, like phoning up to sell fax paper, which is hit your numbers, contact this retailer list that we've bought, ding, 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 send an email, cut and paste your name into a badly formatted font so that you can see where they've added your name in, because it's in Helvetica, and that's the rest of it's in Times New Roman. It's to hit the numbers, and immediately tells you, do you want to work with a company like that anymore? Because they're not utilising all the technology, all the various websites like CheckoutScout or wherever else to sell their wares, and be relevant at the right time.
And I think for me it's the positioning.
You might need your microphone.
Oh, sorry. For me, I think it's the positioning as well. So 99.5% of them, approximately, all improve customer experience and give me a positive ROI. And it's okay. Well, that describes everything, right? So for me, it's being much more specific. I think it's a really good point.
What we do is we always divide their numbers by 10. So we'll give you 300% ROI improvement. That means 30% tops. But another tip.
And thank you for starting that approach. Rather than a question, if anybody else has got any tips or questions, I can see two hands there. Sorry, the light's right in my face, but if you can get over to that side.
Hi guys. You spoke a lot about getting proof points.
Could you just say who you are and where you're from, please?
Yeah, of course. I'm Debbie Ellison from VML1 eCommerce.
Thank you.
You spoke a lot about getting proof points from providers, suppliers, especially in the market that you're in. Where does the innovation come with that then? If you want to try something different, do something different, there won't be any proof points there.
That's a really
You'd like to try and kick off with that one, Louisa?
Yeah, I look at vendors, and vendors, Facebook, Google, whoever it might be, as thought leaders. It's really important to bring these people in from outside, because they are at the forefront of that technology, and there is so much out there. it's very hard to sell in a dream and an innovation, but I think it's a further on down the conversation. It's having the conversation around the problems that you're trying to solve and how that vendor could potentially help you along that way. And then at the appropriate time they say, and there's an opportunity to run a beta here, or we could have a think about that there. And, you know, I personally would really appreciate that, because you're not only thinking more future with me, but you're also educating me on what the latest thing is that's coming up. So I think that is a brilliant I really like that. If I was a vendor, I might steal that from you. Still with pride. I
think the element, though, of like, if you're a mature retailer, e-commerce retailer, you're looking for that incrementality that you're not going to get if you're starting out and set everything up, which you're in and I'm partly in at the moment. And I think it's really important, as you said, to show that incremental problem that you're solving, if they can prove that. But equally, don't go and do that and then say, just because you want to get more seeding, that you want to charge like 300 grand for it, because that ain't going to happen. So it's got to be a give if you're going to be a case study for them. So that's the thing for vendors is, you know, if you're new to the market with a new innovation, you've got to give a little bit as well.
And also, I do think. Oh, sorry.
You go for it.
I was just going to say, I do think there's an element to that. There's a lot of tech providers that work with you on a really consultative basis, and maybe the solutions are not one size fits all, where you can present a really broad case study to clients. But what you can do is provide references of who you've worked with. And as a brand, I almost think sometimes that's just as important, because you get to go and see the lived-in experience of how that tech's been implemented, or if a company you know is doing well is using it. That's a huge point as well. And then there's lots of room and opportunity for that innovation and creating those tailored solutions.
Thank you for that question, Debbie. I did see another hand there, maybe even two, so maybe you could pass the microphone. Oh, you've got it already, thanks.
Hi there. Just a quick point really, it's David Wick from Mirror Outlet. When we always look at technology, we always say how easy to onboard. My next question is how easy to offboard if it doesn't work. And they don't really like that type of response.
Aron, have you have to offboard any technology recently?
Well, that's where I like trials, and I like multivariate testing, text against text. So you choose two vendors, give a portion of traffic to the two texts, and say, right, we're talking to both of you, just to let you know, and maybe the strongest one win. So by definition, you're going to offboard one of them. So it's.
Do they not tread on each other's toes and the customer experience get a bit blurred?
It depends on what portion of traffic. So you can use small portions of traffic and then just go through a multivariate test, see what really drives that incrementality, as you say, which one is actually living up to its promise of the magic AI, but it's a great big black box that the salesperson can't describe. So at that point, you go through and get the real numbers out of it, and then you go, right, okay, it's this one over here, congratulations, sorry, you're off-boarded, you are onboarded. Let's accelerate up 100%. And that being able to test and learn at speed really drives a strong differentiator. And these techs aren't just about how you choose the tech, but it's also how you implement it. You can choose the best tech and implement it poorly, get a poor result. Or choose the worst tech, implement it really well, and get a fantastic result. So,
I think now with GTM and just front-end technology, it's quite easy to take vendors off. Depends how deep they're integrated, to be honest with you. If you're changing web platform, that's a completely different discussion to changing an A/B testing technology that you might want to use. So it's not that hard.
I'm getting the nod from our esteemed Master of Ceremonies here. So I think we might have to bring this panel, CX can also mean client experience, to a close. I think we've learned quite a lot, and I would like you to join me thanking our panel, Rhya, Louisa, David and Aron. Thank you all very much.